It's funny, isn't it, how you can literally think you've come up with the greatest idea for a feature and the nation will go mad and you get nothing through. And then Chris says, what's your favourite breakfast cereal? And we're inundated with people getting in touch. I like how this show is so highbrow. I love the fact that Chris says, I like honey. What do you like? And literally, we've had so many people going, Special K for me. I like Cocoa Pops. I like this. I like that. I like that. So we are joined by Dr. Chris, who, this is the first one this year, actually, and it's February the 5th. It's taken quite a long time. But then again, that's probably because Chris had forgotten who the radio station are, and he'd forgotten who I am, because apparently we've never met before. And I had to introduce myself all over again. And Chris comes on. Well, we're hoping every Monday, but with this new job, we're not entirely sure if we'll be able to do it live, if we'll do it pre-recorded, or if you're in the Manchester area, you can come over and we can film and record a full batch of them all together.
Wow. Well, we'll talk about it. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, but let's talk about honey.
Yes, let's talk about honey. So I'm going to set you off now, and then potentially I am going to sort of interrupt you if I need to, in order to hope that I told my children the right facts about this. So, Chris, you've got some honey. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, I love this stuff. So for my breakfast, whether it's in porridge or on toast or whatever, I just love eating honey. This is a locally produced one. So some friends of ours in church have got beehives, and they produce this honey, so it's good local stuff. Apparently, if you have allergies and so on, using the local honey is a real benefit. Lots of health benefits to honey, actually, that I hear about. So I'm going to keep it going in my diet. Now, I think I'm going to take a guess here, that the fact that you may have told your son there is that the earliest jar of honey, edible honey, that's ever been found was found in the tomb of King Tutankhamun in Egypt. And that's true. That was true until about 5 years ago. So it depends, how out of date your Google exploration is. But it was true for many, many years. When Howard Carter in the 1920s broke into the sealed tomb of Tutankhamun, they found a 3,300-year-old jar of honey, and it was still edible. So it's amazing the preservative quality of honey. Since then, though, there has been an earlier a few jars that were found actually in Georgia, and in Georgia they were laying an oil pipeline, 2003 I think it was, so about 20 years ago. And in the oil pipeline, when they dug it through, they found a whole collection of 5,500-year-old jars of honey, 5,500 years old, meadowflower honey, berry honey, linden honey, so different types of honey. And they would have been airtight sealed. No ants could get and eat it. And 5,500 years old, still edible. So it's amazing the quality of honey. Now, the Bible says that Israel, or Canaan, was a land flowing with milk and honey. That's the way it's described for the people of God, a land flowing with milk and honey. The milk, goat's milk, I guess, but cows as well. They kept cows too. So milk, of course, we know the value of milk, health benefits for the bones and so on. But it's also a land flowing with honey. And that speaks not just of health benefits, but of the sweetness of this land as well. However, generally, we've said, and archaeologists have thought, that the honey bit in a land flowing with milk and honey was probably date honey. It's the honey from date trees, not from bees, because we don't think that there was any kind of honey production at the time of the Joshua conquest, when the Israelites arrived in the land. They were doing honey in Egypt, where Tutankhamun got his honey from. We've actually got wool reliefs showing how they did it. We can see ancient Egyptian beehives and how they looked after the bees. And that's even before the time of Joseph. So those are ancient. Now, when the Israelites arrive, here's a really exciting archaeological find from just a few years ago. When the Israelites arrive, honey is not a big deal, not bee honey. So it's probably date honey. You remember the story of Samson, maybe, at the time of the Judges. He found honey, but where did Samson find his honey? In the carcass of a lion. So that's like that's a bit grim, really, isn't it? That's like some skeletal remains of a lion, and there's the honeybees settling in. Well, that kind of honey comes from wild bees, who are pretty dangerous, actually. So Samson was a pretty tough guy to get the honey from there. That's wild bee honey. There's not much of it. and you couldn't make that a land flowing with honey until, and here's the archaeological site, until a few years ago we found at Tel Rehov, which is in the Jordan River Valley, not only pots of honey, evidence of pots of honey, but 30 large cylinders that were remains of beehives. And in the beehives, there were 30 of these beehives. In the beehives, they found the remains of worker bees, drones, even the larvae, and you can carbon date those remains. So what they had found, and this just a few years ago, are the remains of what's called an apiary. So it's the beehives. It's the actual production center. It's the earliest one found anywhere in the world, not just pictures of it, but the stuff itself. And carbon dating, get this right, the carbon dating showed this set of beehives belongs to about 1000 BC. So they're nearly 3000 years old. Now, why is that interesting? We're in the land of Israel, okay? 1000 BC. Why is that interesting? This is the time of King Solomon in the Bible. And who's King Solomon? This is after the time of Samson, after the time of the Israelites arriving in the land. King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 33, is the king who asked for wisdom from God and got a wisdom in all the things about trees and plants and animals and fish, bees. King Solomon would have known about how to keep bees. He'd have worked it out. He'd have understood it. He'd have got some information from the Egyptians too. And the bees that we find in these beehives, they can test the remains. There's only fragmentary remains. But these bees are not the wild bees that Samson had been encountering. These are domesticated bees. We still find the same kind of bees in Turkey today. And these are the kind of bees that are much milder in temper. You know, they don't keep stinging you. And these are the bees that produce lots of honey. So from the time of King Solomon in the land of Israel, we've got the archaeological evidence for the actual beehives themselves that had been introduced into the land of Israel. And what had been a land flowing with milk and honey with maybe the date honey of trees really did become a land flowing with milk and honey with the honey of bees. So it's a land flowing with milk and honey, Gareth. And honey, beautiful thing. It's a thing that can bring healing, good to include it in our diet. It goes way back into the ancient world, and King Solomon knew a lot about it too.
Boy, we've missed you, Chris.
Oh, Gareth, I miss you too.
It's absolutely amazing, isn't it? That honey is just a thing, and nature and what God has created is just amazing. Yeah. And I was going to share with you, but to be honest with you, after that, my story's so boring, I may not bother. But when I used to work in a supermarket, they used to chuck away so much waste. I think it has changed now, thankfully, because we're all a bit more cautious about food waste. But at the end of the day, you'd have a trolley full of stuff. Now, there'd be eggs in there, there'd be bread. And one time, there was literally, there must have been about 50 jars of honey that they were going to chuck away. They were all sealed in the jar. And because the expiry date on them was coming up to a few weeks, he said, right, chuck them away. And they all went in the bin. So I did a bit of research on this, and there's certain things like honey where it's not actually the thing itself that goes off. It could be potentially the thing that they're packed in. But then again, you just mentioned about they found it in Tutankhamun's tomb in glass jars, presumably, or pot glass jars.
Well, it's ceramic.
Yeah. So that hasn't spoiled. And still to this day, Chris, that hurts me, the fact that all that honey went to waste, because honey doesn't go off, does it?
Honey doesn't go off, so you just eat old jars of honey, you'll be fine. Also, I tell you the other funny thing. I saw a salt bag. Somebody showed me a bag of salt that said on it, millions of years old, it said. Salt, millions of years old. And then it had the expiry date. Where did you get that from?
It's strange, isn't it? The things that happen. But honestly, I love honey, and there's some beekeepers near my parents' allotment. So we tend to sort of, when it's better weather and stuff, I take the kids down there. And I did that. It would have been around June time last year. And I had to laugh because this beekeeper, he's really experienced. He must be in about his 80s, and he knows them ins and outs. He knows exactly if the hive is an aggressive one or not. So me and the kids walked down, and he said, you can come closer than that. That's absolutely fine. And I was a little bit concerned, but these bees, they were fine. And then my dad walked down, and literally it was like they saw red. and all of this swarm started going to him. And this beekeeper had to say,
Oh, no.
you may want to go back a bit, sir. Go back a bit. And Dad got stung twice. And I was like,
Oh,
I wonder if there's something that like
yeah,
bees, they can read characters, or there's some sort of scent. And they just went mad
yeah.
for him, because literally me and the kids, we would have been about a metre away from the hive. Not a problem at all. And we took the advice of this beekeeper, and he said, you'll be fine. But my dad, they clearly
Wow.
took an instant dislike to him.
Yeah. It may be the
Strange, isn't it?
links, it may be the aftershave or something.
The Lynx, the Brute, or the Old Spice, it may have been.
Oh, spice. That'll do it.
Chris, it's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you so much. Take care, and we'll be praying for you for this brand new challenge. So you start in March, don't you, with this new
March
role?
the 3rd. Yeah, March the 3rd. Yeah. It'll be streamed if anybody's interested in joining me. So it's a Sunday morning. So if you've probably got other things to do, but it will be streamed online.
So is that your first sermon that you'll be doing?
No, actually, I'm not preaching at it, but I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do? Maybe I won't go. Maybe I'll take the morning off.
Modern dance. Modern dance is always the way forward.
Yeah, that could be a good start and finish.
Take care, Chris. God bless you.
Thanks. Bye.